Good morning.
Good morning.
This week, I was privileged to hear of a miracle. You ready? I met a woman in the oncology unit who came in presenting with an onion-sized cancerous tumor in the lower regions. She was misdiagnosed previously, so had lived with pain from this tumor for quite a while. When she came in to the ICU, what she reported from this cancerous tumor was pain like she was bearing down giving birth constantly, like she was giving birth to a cinder block. And so when she was in the ICU, she was thrashing, yelling, hitting herself to distract herself from the pain. Even the physician, the attending, was nervous and didn't know what to do. For quite a period of time, they had been giving her different types of pain medication safely and titrating up, but none of the pain medication was touching it because she had lived with it for too long. So she is hitting herself in the leg, just desperate, suffering, yelling. The doctor looked, he was so nervous, he turned to the nurse and said, "Nurse, help!" The doctor said to the nurse, "Help." He didn't know how to help this woman. And so here begins the miracle. The nurse, having been there all that time with the doctor doing everything they could to help her, suddenly stood at the head of the patient and started praying out loud. And within a minute, the patient went completely quiet. And she said, she reported to me later, once she got onto our unit, the cancer unit, she said, "Chaplain," she said, "I heard the voice." She said, "I heard his voice, and he said, 'Peace, be still now. Peace, be still now.'" And she quieted way down, and she became very still, and everybody in the ICU didn't know what to do. They were very glad. But then she hears a voice from God again that said, "You will have more pain. You will continue to suffer, but I will be with you." And then she reports, "I felt like his hand was pushing into my chest gifts." So she's still now. He didn't take away the pain. She still was feeling the pain. But he starts pushing into her chest gifts, individual gifts, which she doesn't know what they are yet. She says, but it was like a thing was being put inside me, one by one. And it just kept coming. And then she's laying there on the bed in the ICU, and he's planting these gifts inside of her, and she's just really quiet. And she's feeling it, she's seeing it, she's experiencing it. And then she says, "Why all these gifts?" And then God says in the center of her mind, he says, "I don't give gifts that I know won't be used." So in that moment, she knew she was going to live. And then she said, "I knew I was called into ministry." And upon further review of her chart notes, she's tolerating chemotherapy and her tumor is responding. And she's doing very well. Praise be the Lord. So you know when someone tells you something and they're telling you in a way that it's real. It's not just, God gives us thoughts. That's part of the gift, is an amazing mind that can fathom time and space and can sense eternity. And we use our minds and we speak from our heads and our thoughts a lot. But when someone speaks from actual experience, it rings a bell. And you can sense the truth of that moment. And it's very rare that I actually have this kind of visit with a patient who has been completely touched by God, and then the science is showing that she's surviving and she's doing quite well. But the most important point here is that when God awakens the spirit, when God awakens your spirit, everything changes. Everything. Nothing remains the same. Everything changes. So whereas before, the way that this person tolerated the excruciating pain was to be loud, hitting herself to distract herself from the pain that she was having, was to be angry. She was angry. She, understandably was so afraid. So she was trying to understandably control how that moment was going, because everything was out of control. And then she said, and chaplain, when I heard the peace be still, she said, I got very quiet. So the opposite response in the Native American tradition, it says, when the Creator moves, it's important that you pay attention to what comes that is a surprise to you, because that means you're not trying to control. And we're given control, healthy control. Self-control is one of the gifts. So if you're out of control, pray for self-control. That's a good thing. But there's also, just as in the yin and the yang of everything, there is a very functional aspect to that quality, and there is a dysfunctional aspect to over-controlling. And so she was trying to control, understandably, out of fear and pain, what was happening to her in that moment. And God just said, be still, be very still, I am here. And you will feel pain again, and I'm not going to take away this pain. But what did God give her in that moment?
Gifts.
Yes. And in that moment, God gave her perception of the pain. God changed the perception of the pain in that moment. The pain was still there, but what was she not doing now?
Scared.
Yeah, she wasn't scared at all. Can you imagine having excruciating pain and not having an ounce of fear? Because the one who made you is right here. Right here. Be still and know that I am God. And so what's really important is to focus on who? The nurse. What did she do?
Pray.
She prayed. When everything else failed in science, it was, you could even say that she was being used as a vessel for God. Absolutely. She was being used in the very best sense by God as a vessel and a channel for that woman. And you could even go as far to say that she was ordained in that moment to give that sovereign prayer. You could even say in that moment she had been given the gift. She had been ordained by God to give this sovereign prayer that changed everything for that woman. Now, just let that sit for a minute and let yourself soak up that moment. The journey of faith is varied and extremely creative. What do I mean by that? I mean that everybody's faith journey is different. We tend to want to make cookie cutters out of our faith. We tend to want to be like other people. We want to emulate other people's faith journey. Hey, I want what he has. I want that gift. I want the gift of public speaking. I want the gift of patience. Oh, you're so blessed. You have all these things. But the journey of faith is different for everyone. And to the extent that we try to control it or be like someone else, we block God's gifts. And it's so easy to try to control how our journey goes. I can tell you that years ago when I knew I couldn't have children, my faith just went out the window. Nobody wants that faith journey. Anybody have that experience where, you can't say for sure, and especially in my calling, I need to know that the truth of God and the love of God is everything. And guess what? I said to this congregation years ago when I knew I was barren and we couldn't adopt, the third adoption went away, and we couldn't adopt children, we ran out of money. And all of a sudden, it was like a barren farm field where nothing was growing inside me. And I said to the congregation, I said, I don't know. I can't tell you these things are true. Everything's gone. My faith has left me. The only thing I know is that there's something really loving, like right up against me. That's all I knew at that time, when I knew I couldn't be a mom, either adopted or natural. And I couldn't profess any truth to you. I couldn't tell you anything's true. But all I could say to the congregation was, I just feel this loving presence right next to me. That's all I can tell you I know. You may want to find another minister. And the congregation, it was under the old crabapple tree, by the way. I don't know if some of you remember this. But the congregation said, no, that's fine. We'll stick with you. And it took a summer. It took about a full, long summer of me saying, I don't know. I don't know about all this. Bleh. And around September, in the harvest, inside something started to come back. And guess what? The harvest, what we grew, was much more beautiful and lush and full than what I had before. It had so many dimensions of life to it. And see, that faith journey I wouldn't wish on any of you. You wouldn't want that. You don't want to envy that painful journey where I'm actually trying to inspire you and I've got nothing to give. I had nothing to give but the honest truth that I had nothing. And I was going through a desert. And it was painful because I love you and I want to be with you in all the seasons of life, but I had nothing for you. And it took a while to come back. And when I did, it was so multi-dimensional. My faith became alive again, but in a way that I can't really describe except to tell you that everything inside of me had infinite layers. So, and so I say to you, that your faith journey is not like my journey. Anybody here barren? Anybody here barren? Yeah. Anybody here lose your faith ever in your life? Yeah. Yeah. And I promise you that it wasn't just like mine. And you have had your own faith journey and you know things I don't know. I guarantee it. You know things about God that I don't know yet. And in our own time and in our own way, our faith journeys come alive and they die and they regrow, and it's okay, it's good. God wants the faith journey to be unique and creative. So look at this woman who was in the midst of excruciating pain, and God says, be still, I am here, I'm not going to take away your pain, but I am with you. And then he starts planting these gifts in her chest, and now she's going to be a minister. So when God moves, everybody in that event changes. Imagine how that changed the nurse and the doctor. And then, guess what? She told me now that the pain was relieving and she was receiving good results from the treatment. She said, you know what, chaplain? She says, my uncle has just started a church in Detroit, and only 4 or 5 people are going. And she said, he's been trying for a number of years, and it's just not taking off. And I've kind of been sitting there saying, oh, I'll go Sunday and help him. I'll go Sunday and help him, but she never did. So guess what? She's going to go on Sundays and help him. She's receiving that call to be of use because God doesn't give us gifts that He knows we won't use. So in other words, God gives gifts when he knows we'll use them. So, think about the gifts you've been given. Think about not only what you do well, but what gives you joy. Think about how you help people or how you want to help people. The gift of tears. I know that we have several people in this congregation who've lost loved ones, and they're honest and sincere in their grief journey, and they're sharing the gift of tears. Guess what people are telling me secretly? Now I feel like I can cry. Now I feel like I can have my grief and I can move forward in it. So explore the gifts that God has given you, but most importantly, don't hesitate. Use them. Receive them and use them. But by all means, when you know you have a gift, don't sit on it. Don't sit on that gift, because it will be used one way or another. May the peace of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you, settle upon you, and bless you this day.